see a series of horrors. I looked last night: wars, violence, displacement, abductions, random killings, assassinations, torture, loss of lives, of homes. Everywhere you see enormous suffering. And you can name the places where these things are happening. Last night I saw Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Nigeria, Ukraine, and Afghanistan. The Congo rarely features in the news, yet all these things happen there on a daily basis and have been happening for decades. Nearly 6 million people have died in the Congo since 1998 as a result of war-related causes. This is the greatest number since World War II. It's been called the deadliest war in the world. The International Rescue Committee estimates that 1,250 people die each day in the Congo as a result of the various wars that are going on. So why isn't it in the news? The Congo is one of the poorest countries in the world. It's been defined as the worst place in the world for women and children because of sexual violence, recruitment of child soldiers, and infant mortality. Corruption has been the norm for decades in the government and in all other areas of life. The Congo has enormous mineral resources which are exploited illegally by armed groups and are used to fuel the ongoing conflicts. It has a whole range of armed militias, both internal and from outside countries, which continue each day to engage in destructive conflict. When confronting problems on this scale, what on earth can one do? So I want to look first at what someone else has done when he looked into that heart of darkness.
I'm a very fortunate person. I've been lucky and blessed enough to be very successful in ways that I always wanted as an actor, writer, director, and so on. But I got to a point where I felt like I'm living this kind of vacuous life. I'm just living for myself. I'm chasing some idea or some goal. But I didn't know what my values were. I didn't know what I was contributing to the world. I was reading about the violence in Western Sudan, and it said some 300,000 deaths in Darfur are dwarfed only by the 5 million deaths in Central Africa in the years. 5 million deaths. That's an unimaginable number. How could this have happened? How did I not know about it? What is everybody doing? Why are we doing something? So I thought I had to do something. If I have anything to contribute, at the least I could shine a spotlight on Congo. There's this aphorism about give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. The Congolese already know how to fish. That's not the issue. The issue is they just don't have the actual opportunities in front of them. They don't have the resources. So how do we help them find the resources? This was my thing. Let's do something to work with people, to help them try to make things better in their lives. In 2010, I formed the Eastern Congo Initiative. And what we do are 2 things. 1, we make grants, and 2, we do advocacy. What's different about us is who we make grants to. The grants that we make are to community-based organizations, Congolese grassroots organizations who are addressing the most urgent needs in Eastern Congo. We looked around to see who was doing the best work, and we found out that it was actually the local organizations themselves. The Congolese people who lived in these neighborhoods, who worked in these communities, these were the people who had survived the poverty and the violence, and where they were working because their lives depended on it, because their communities depended on it. These groups had no access to funds, and I thought this is a place where there's a real need. Well, for one example, we're funding a school in Goma called Children's Voice. It just amazes me every time I go there. The kids are mostly child soldiers or orphans, and none of these kids can afford to go to school. Yet the appetite they have for learning is incredible. It's like nothing I've ever seen. There's 3 kids to a desk, more than 100 kids in a classroom. Every question the teacher asks, almost every hand goes up. This is important work, but it's also very rewarding for me. No question in my mind that down the road, when I'm an old man, I look back on my life, this will be the thing that I most respect. But of course, I'm not doing it alone. There are hundreds of people in the U.S. and Canada working beside me. Every person who works or supports or donates or advocates with me is doing it too. This is what I believe in, what I think of as the meaning of life. Getting involved with something, helping others, improving the fabric of the universe. I believe if you do that, even just a little bit, I think you'll find your life gets better too.
In our own small way, we are doing what Ben Affleck is doing. We also at St. Stephen's are supporting children, child soldiers, orphans in a school in Goma in Eastern Congo. We're helping them to get an education. There's another artist I want to present to you who was shocked, like Ben Affleck, like myself, by the tragic realities of life in the Congo and the ignorance of the world to that situation. The contemporary Irish photographer Richard Moss. Richard Moss spent many months in Eastern Congo, living through some of the horrors himself, and shining a light on the realities through a series of extraordinary photographs which have been exhibited at the Venice Biennale and in major galleries around the world. Like Ben Affleck, Moss wanted to make the tragic situation in Eastern Congo visible. To do this, he used a discontinued Kodak infrared film designed in the early 1940s by the US military for World War II. The infrared light is invisible to the human eye, but can identify the enemy hidden in the landscape. It makes the invisible visible. This photograph is a challenge. It's designed obviously to catch the attention of the viewer, to say, look, this is not what you think, so think about what you see. Another of his photographs shows us there with the infrared, lying hidden in that beauty as soldiers, ready to kill, to maim, to rape, to destroy. And lying hidden in that beauty are bodies, victims of the conflicts that have gone on for decades. War is not beautiful, but Moss says that when you create an image of beauty out of war, it creates ethical problems in the viewer's mind. He feels confused, angry, disoriented, but he's compelled at least to think about what he is looking at. So what are the problems in the Congo? Why have they come about? Why are they so underreported? And how, like Ben Affleck and Richard Moss, are we getting involved and making some small difference? I think the Congo is underreported for 2 main reasons. One, because it's long-standing, it's not immediate news. And 2, because it's very complicated. It's not easy news. There are no easy solutions, and there are no easy identifications. It's not black and white with the good guys on one side and the bad guys on the other side. Perhaps the first problem is over 100 years of corrupt and cruel governance, beginning with King Leopold of Belgium, and continuing up until the present day. Many of you have read Joseph Conrad's novel, Heart of Darkness, which was published in 1899, and you've seen through that some of the horrors of colonialism. Towards the end of the 19th century, European powers fought for control over African states in what became known as the Scramble for Africa. By 1910, 90% of Africa was under colonial control. King Leopold was given Congo as his own personal domain. And in the 23 years that he was in control, he plundered its resources, turned the people into slave laborers to harvest ivory and the new demand for rubber. People who failed to meet the quota had their hands cut off and were often tortured and killed. The Congo was given independence in May 1960. The first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, was arrested in September of the same year and was executed with the support of Western governments the following year. Joseph Mobutu took power and ruled with an iron fist from 1971, 1997. While the Congolese people suffered unemployment, hunger, poverty, and disease, Mobutu got richer and richer through corruption and theft. It's estimated that he stole between $4 and $15 billion from the country. He was finally forced into exile in 1977. Today, the country is ruled by Joseph Kabila, the son of the previous leader, who was himself assassinated. Corruption is still very present in every aspect of life. Problem number 2 is the vast mineral wealth of the Congo, particularly in the eastern part of the country. The Congo is estimated to have $24 trillion worth of untapped minerals, including cobalt, diamonds, gold, copper, and coltan. Probably every one of us in this auditorium has something that has been mined in the Congo. Coltan is essential for cell phones, computers, MP3 players, and perhaps some of us own what comes from what is now known as conflict minerals. Rebel groups, government soldiers, foreign forces, multinationals all fight for control of the rich mines. The profits do not go to the people of the Congo. The minerals are frequently used to fuel the conflicts. They finance many armed groups and exploit the local people, using rape and violence as a deliberate strategy to control and intimidate the local population. Children are used to work in the mines. Most of the mineral wealth is exported illegally. Neighboring Rwanda has no significant gold, coltan, or diamond mines, yet it exported $240 million worth of coltan in 2000. It exports $29 million worth of gold each year and $40 million worth of diamonds. The third major problem is the endless conflicts. Government forces versus rebel forces. Local ethnic groups against each other. Other national forces and ethnicities from Rwanda, from Uganda, competing for control of the mines and of the populations. The first Congo War was the result of the Rwandan genocide. The genocide did not finish in 1994. It went over the border. Between 1 and 1.5 million refugees entered the Congo during and after the genocide. Hutu bases were set up in refugee camps near Goma. In 1996, Rwandan Ugandan forces invaded Congo, wishing to destroy the Hutu bases, repatriate Tutsis who had fled, and overthrow the Hutu. Amnesty International claims that close to 250,000 Hutus were killed. Today, 20 years after the genocide, Hutu and Tutsi militias continue to fight it out in eastern Congo. Rwanda and Uganda invaded again in 1998. Several neighboring countries were pulled into the conflict. It became known as the Great African War, involving 9 countries and at least 20 different militias. Millions of people were displaced. Millions died. Some estimate as many as 6 million, as I said, making it the deadliest war since World War II. Although it was formally concluded in 2000, continues with dozens of different groups fighting, now largely for control of the mines in the east. There are continuing conflicts between ethnic groups, as I said. The wars continue and will continue because so many people are making such huge profits from them. They are going on right in the very area where the Chikudu kids live, in eastern Congo, near the city of Goma. And that is why so many children there are orphans or child soldiers. When I first visited the orphanage 6 years ago, I knew a little, but not very much. Like Ben Affleck, I was shocked. Why hadn't I known of this huge tragedy before? Why wasn't it in the news? The children, all victims of these conflicts, were housed in a drafty wooden shack. That shack had a dirt floor. They had torn mosquito nets. They got malaria. They had no source of income except a small amount of money from a local church. They had no contacts outside their own community. And so I thought, like Ben, that if we could work directly with that community, directly with the man who had made it his life's work to support these children, then perhaps, even if we couldn't take on the big issues, we could at least make a difference to the lives of these children. In 6 years, working with the St. Stephen's community, with the students, the faculty, the parents, the friends, I think we've achieved a lot. We've built a new house for the children. There are currently 28 children inside the house, 52 children in welcome families nearby. We've built a new bathroom. This is the bathroom that they had before. This is the bathroom that, with the money raised here at St. Stephen's, we were able to build for them. We must say we liked it yesterday. Thank you. We've built a security wall for them. Since the fighting is often right in the area where they are, we've built a large, 2-meter high security wall to protect them when the fighting comes close. We've provided a water tank for them so that they don't have to go outside and queue up for hours each day to get water. And we have provided school supplies for them, as well as we've paid school fees for the children for the last 2 years, just buying supplies and delivering supplies this summer. We've turned an area by the orphanage that was just full of volcanic rubble into a playground so that they can enjoy playing outside. These are some of the things we've achieved as a community here to help a small community there. The children, we've given the name to them, the Chikudu kids. The Chikudu is a wooden bike that is distinctive in this part of the country, used mostly by young boys to transport goods. It's cheap, it's resilient, it's a symbol of the local people's will to survive. This summer, I bought them their own Chikudu bike, which they can now use to earn some money by transporting goods themselves. Like Ben Affleck, I believe that the local people are the best people to work with. With Kazungu and with the children, they've proved this again and again in the past few years. We've made a contribution, but they have worked hard to use those contributions to make a better life for these children. We have projects for the future to continue our support, to buy a piece of land in a safe area so that they can begin a chicken farm, which would have several advantages, providing food for the children, protein, meat and eggs, to generate an income for the orphanage, and to provide employment for local people who would be looking after the land and the chickens. We have begun to raise money for school fees for all 80 orphans, and we'll be continuing with that, supporting education for these children the way Ben Affleck is supporting a school in Goma. Thank you to the Science Idea Club and to the Parents Association who've already begun the fundraising for that. We will continue with that. And the Elvis Presley show, which will take place on Saturday the 7th of February, we'll ask for a small donation for that. Those donations will all go towards paying school fees for the 80 orphans that are in the Chikudu Children's Home there in Eastern Goma. So I think, like Ben Affleck, like Richard Moss, it's important to try to shine a light, to make the invisible visible, and to know that as big as the problems are, we as a community can contribute to helping improve the lives of some of the